Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I suppose I should say good morning to those of you who might be joining us from the Central Time Zones, the Mountain Time Zones, or Pacific Time Zones. And of course, I always want to say good evening to those of you who might be joining us from across the pond, or good early morning to those of you who might be joining us from parts of Australia, New Zealand, or Asia. Well, welcome to today's presentation, the Introduction to Power Options. Today we're going to discuss tips on how to navigate the site to help you save time with your options research and analysis. We're going to begin in just a moment. We're going to allow some of our other registrants to join us here in the room. For those of you who are currently on your 14-day free trial, I just want to remind you that if you do subscribe to Power Options before the end of your 14-day free trial, you will receive an additional 14 days for free. So you'll have the use of Power Options for one full month before you're billed for the service. And also, if you haven't done so yet, whether you're a trial member or a subscriber to Power Options, make sure you take advantage of those free coaching sessions. Now, it's not just one and done. You can have as many coaching sessions as you want during your trial or as a subscriber. They are completely free. And the coaching sessions, remember, it's just a 45 to 50-minute phone conversation with myself or maybe Ernie. We'll walk you through the tools on the site, as we're going to do a little bit today, and of course answer any questions that you have. So you want to make sure that you take advantage of those to help you get more familiar with the tools and how they can benefit you with your options research, identifying positions, and of course tracking and managing the positions with the other tools as well. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. And for those of you who are just beginning with Power Options, let's just discuss briefly what is Power Options. And Power Options is a patented suite of search and analysis tools that are designed for self-directed options investors. Ernie Zarrenner created the Power Options site to trade his own account about 15 years ago. The patented tools allow you to search across the universe of options in over 23 different strategies in less than a second, just to identify the positions that match your personal risk-reward tolerance. Once you've identified those positions, you can quickly compare the risk versus reward and further research and analyze the stock or the option position. And then we also have powerful tools, portfolio tools, to help you paper trade or track your positions and also manage your positions and evaluate what your current liquidation value is, what your potential expiration value might be, and what adjustments might be available for you. We're going to take a look at those in the latter part of our presentation today. In addition to that, of course, we also offer countless educational articles and help pages on the various strategies and the various tools on Power Options. And as I mentioned, we have been in business for over 14 years. Everyone here on staff uses the Power Options tools to trade their own personal account, myself included. So we have many more years of combined trading experience at your disposal, whether via phone or through email or through the coaching sessions as well. So you want to make sure you take advantage of that. And my name is Mike Chupka. I'm the Director of Education here at Power Options. I've had the great pleasure of working with Ernie Zarrenner and the Power Options staff for the past 9 years. As I mentioned, I handle a lot of the coaching sessions and education on the site. I've co-authored 2 books with Ernie on options investing, one on protective option strategies and one on naked puts as well. And I've also, of course, lectured for seminars at various points across the country, different seminars for different options investing groups as well. Now, I am versed in all strategies on the site, all 23 plus strategies that we support on Power Options, but there are certain trades I just want to let you know that I don't use or never used in my personal account. And those are things such as naked calls, short straddles and short strangles, iron butterflies or all call butterflies or all put butterflies. These particular positions don't match my personal risk-reward tolerance, but if you have some questions at the latter part of the presentation about those strategies, I'll be more than happy to assist you with those as best to my abilities. All right, well, that being said and introduced, let's navigate over to the main Power Options suite of tools. What we're looking at here is a basic trial account. So when I first log on to my trial account, if you haven't done so yet, if you're on a trial, you want to make sure you take advantage of the 4 steps that are outlined here. You can download the free user guide or have a printed version mailed to you if you prefer. There are a variety of flash tutorials that are available in the Learning Center, as well as other education in the Learning Center menu as well. And these will help you walk through some of the search tool functionality, some of the portfolio tools. We host a variety of free live webinars during the week, but you can also view our archives at any time. That's also available in the Learning Center. And then, of course, the 4th step is the free individual coaching session. Now below the 4 steps, if you're just getting started, if you're already a subscriber, you won't see those really, but below that we have the data pods on the home page that you can customize to get a quick market view. And you see we have the Power Watch list here selected, list 1, 2, and 3. As you add stocks that you're tracking to see the current price or change on the current day, this will actually create a stock list for you in the search tools that you can screen against. So if I just want to screen for covered calls, for example, on the stocks in my watch list 1, I'll be able to select that from a drop-down menu. We'll showcase that when we get into the main part of the search tool there. We have our upcoming live webinars pod and some basic market activity as well with some of the various indexes. And I've also selected the pod for ETF gainers and losers, where I can look at the standard ETFs, the inverse, and leveraged ETFs as well. There's a variety of other data pods you can select on the main home page to get a view. If you wanted to view the stocks that have earnings announced today, latest stock splits, new 52-week highs or lows, top industry gainers and losers, or top stock gainers and losers, you can just select that from the drop-down menu. If I select top stock gainers, that will place that into the next available field here, so column 1, slot 2, that puts in the stock gainers, but I can click and drag any of these pods into any area that I want, so I can just simply move that over to the side here, so I have that under the webinars menu. And if I wanted to minimize, leave the headers available, minimize those, just use a small button there. We can minimize the different pods. We still have the header available, but we can always expand that later. So increase the size again. And if I wanted to remove a pod, of course, I simply click the red X. That'll remove the pod from the main home menu, and then I can always pull it back up from the drop-down menu. Now, if you have a suggestion for a data pod that you would like to see that's currently not available, of course, just send us an email to support@powerop.com, and we'll see if we can get that implemented. All right, so that's just some of the basic features when you first log on. Let's talk about the general navigation. The Power Options tools are designed by a tab navigation system. When you first log in, we're linked to the Home tab. This is locked in place. And underneath the main Home tab, we can register for the free coaching session. That'll take you to a scheduler, and you can register for a time. We already talked about some of the features in the Learning Center menu. Some of our educational products you can access through the Power Store. We do have a weblog as well where you can track recent articles on certain stock positions or option positions. The sign-up bonuses, if you're currently on your 14-day free trial, you want to make sure that you click that link there with the sign-up bonuses to take advantage of some of the free offers. And then, of course, you can use the My Account tab here to make any adjustments to your personal information, email address. You want to change that assigned user ID and password for something that's easier for you to remember. You can do that through the My Account tab. Now the My Portfolio tab, this is where we track our open positions and our portfolio performance. The Profit and Loss Portfolio, this is where we track our open positions. We can view our realized gain and loss or unrealized gain and loss through the historical reports and the analysis view. It's also a snapshot view of your current open positions, an allocation view. Any position that you're tracking in the Profit and Loss Portfolio, you can set an alert for, and you can view all of your alerts here in the alert summary. And of course, there's also an insurance tool, but we'll talk about all of this later on in the last maybe 15 minutes of the presentation, 15-20 minutes when we get to the portfolio tools. And you see next to that we now have our strategies, and we have about 7 strategies selected from married put to covered call, credit and debit spread, long call, naked put. The main defaults here are just a default setting for the basic strategies that are used. I also have the custom spread selected as well. But we can change these based on what strategies we're looking to implement, so you can adjust this and customize the strategy tabs that you have on top based on this kind of strategies you're implementing. And to do that, we simply click on the Other Strategies tab, and we see here our selected strategies on the right, and on the left in our available strategies is all the different trades we could, different strategies we can add to the menu. So before we go any further, I'm just going to launch a quick poll to help gear us for the rest of the presentation. This is the only poll that we'll have today. And what I want to know is just what types of option strategies are you researching or trading right now? And this is only a select one instead of select multiple. So just select the strategy that you're mainly focusing on right now. Are you mostly looking at covered calls and naked puts? Are you taking a look at the protective option strategy, standard collars perhaps, and married put positions? Are you focusing on the vertical spreads and iron condors? Are you mainly trading long calls and long puts, just buying calls or buying puts, speculating on market movement? Or are you looking at the time spreads, diagonal spreads, and some of those adjusted vertical spreads as well? Okay, so we've had the poll open for about 45 seconds. I'm going to leave it open for about another 10 seconds or so. If you haven't voted yet, I encourage you to do so. And we'll go ahead and shut this poll down in about another 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let's go ahead and close that poll, and I'll share the results with everyone. All right, so it looks like today 69% of our attendees are focusing on covered calls and naked put positions. We've got 25% looking at the protective option strategies, 38% are looking at the vertical spreads and iron condors, and 25% are looking at the long calls and long puts, with 19% also looking at the time spreads. Okay, so we've got a very diverse crowd here. Based on the majority vote here, we are going to spend most of our time today focusing on the tools for covered calls and naked puts, but I will point out some of the subtle differences that may exist in the other strategies. But all of the same processes we go through today are going to be the same processes that you would use in any strategy. All right, let's go ahead and hide that poll, and we take a look at our menu. Well, our winners today, the highest vote was covered calls and naked puts. So what I want to make sure, let's go ahead and move those up to the top. So I'm just going to move covered call and naked put up to the top of the list. Our second place today was 38% doing long calls and long puts. So I do have long calls in there, so let me move that up as well. Up, one more. Sorry about that. Okay, and so we had also 25% doing married puts, collars, and the spread positions. All right. Well, let's remove the collars. And I do have married put, and I have the bull put credit spread and bear put debit, so we'll leave those in as well. And then, of course, we did have 19% doing calendar spreads. So now that I've removed one of the strategies we're now looking at, I want to add in the diagonal spreads, or let's say calendar calls. I just select that from the available menu, my available strategies, click Add to Menu, and that will place that in the next available tab. We're going to leave the custom spreads there as well. So once I've customized how I want my field to use, if I selected the strategies that I want to see and place them in the order that I want, go ahead and click Save. There we go. And now we'll notice that the tabs at the top have changed for our new adjustments. Now we have covered call and naked put listed as 1 and 2. We've got our long call, married put, credit and debit spread, and then the calendar calls as well. All right, so we've customized that. When I want to access the given tools in a particular strategy, we simply click on the Strategy tab, and that'll take us to the main home page for that particular strategy. Every home page will look the same. You have the sub-menus or the sub-tabs underneath for the quick links to the available tools. Underneath of that, we'll have the overview pod for any strategy. It just gives you a few bullet points for that particular strategy, and then of course a link to the more in-depth strategy help page. Underneath of that pod, of course, we'll see the tools pod, and this reflects the same tools that are available in the sub-menus, but we have a brief description. So we have the quick find here for covered calls, starting with a stock symbol. We can just look at near-month covered call opportunities. This reflects it in more of a monetary view as opposed to a percentage return. The option chain on power options, the option chain is very useful for covered call traders and naked put traders, because on our option chain we show you the calculation for downside protection, percent if unchanged, and percent if assigned if you're entering it as a covered call. And for a naked put, we show what is the percentage naked yield, for example, and the percent if unchanged if you're trading as a naked put. So you can use the option chain to go through the different strikes if you're researching one stock at a time. The search tool, of course, this is the patented search tool where we enter in our criteria to identify only those positions that match our personal risk-reward tolerance. The sample searches, these are themed searches that you can use in any strategy as a stepping stone to create your own personal search. And then, of course, you also have the search by symbol. If you just wanted to look for covered call opportunities or vertical spread opportunities one stock at a time, we'd use the search by symbol tool. And, of course, you can also link to the portfolio. And when you're on the trial, you can take a tour of the historical suite of tools, whether the historical search or the historical search by symbol as well. And then, of course, underneath each strategy, underneath the tools pod in each strategy, you'll have a basic learning center where there's several articles or white papers, perhaps a video, which will give you more information on that particular strategy. For example, let's very quickly go to bull put credit spread. We'll go to bull put credit spread home, and we'll see we have our overview pond, our tools pond, but now instead of a listing of white papers, we have two archived videos for vertical spreads part 1 and vertical spreads part 2, which walk through our particular thoughts on the strategy, but also showcase how to use the power options tools to implement those as well. So rather than white papers, you have two videos you can use, you can reference for those particular strategies. Okay, let's go back into the covered call menu. Now, as I mentioned, if I just wanted to see covered call opportunities on a singular stock, there are 3 tools that we can use, okay, in the covered call menu. We can use the quick find. This is particular to just the covered call strategy. We can use the option chain, or we can use the search by symbol. Let's briefly go through the features of each of those before we get into the search tool. We want to spend a lot of time on that today as well. So if I'm interested in covered calls and we click on the quick find tool, this will prompt us to enter in our stock symbol. So let's say enter in a stock PXP, Plains Exploration, and let's just put in 100 shares. And I'll be prompted to say, well, am I neutral? Do I think the stock's going to stay around the same price? Am I a little bit bullish on the stock? Or am I a little bit bearish on the stock as well? For this example, let's just use neutral, and we'll click submit. And what the tool is going to do now, the quick find tool is going to do, is going to go out and look at the option chain, and it's going to give us 3 potential scenarios. Even though we selected neutral, well, right now, Plains Exploration is trading at 42.62. We see that up at the top of the screen. And we're showing if we're slightly bullish, well, we could go out of the money, and we could sell the PXP, the March 44 call, I should say, and we could generate $150. This tells me, of course, the premium's $1.50, so we take in $150. And if the stock moves up, we might make a max profit of $288, and we'd have a 3.5% downside protection. So the money on the table right now for the out-of-the-money call is $1.50. My potential, if the stock is trading above the strike price at March expiration, is $288 with a 3.5 downside protection. Of course, if I go closer to at-the-money now, March 43 call, you have $195, so it's $1.95 premium. Of course, we'd get some appreciation if the stock's trading at above $43. And we're increasing our downside protection as we go to at the money and then slightly in the money with the March 42 call. We're increasing our downside protection, but of course lowering our potential maximum profit. And that's just the combination of in the money covered calls versus at or out of the money covered calls. Now, this is just a quick way to see the monetary value that's on the table right now and the potential profit with the downside protection. Myself personally, and this doesn't have to be how you use the tools, but myself personally, if I'm looking at trading covered calls on a stock right now and I want to compare the different strike prices and the returns, I tend to look at my percentages more than the monetary value. And that's why I'll use the option chain. So I'm still in the covered call tab, but let me click on the option chain. And we'll type in PXP. And let's click submit. I don't want to use the select chain date. I just want to use today's date. This is if I wanted to look historically. But for right now, I just want to look at the current prices for PXP. So this pulls up the chain for us. We have February expiration with 10 days left. Well, maybe I want to look at more months. So let me just go ahead and select all months here. And as you can see, let's scroll down to March here. We can look at a brief comparison. What I'm looking at here on my chain is the different strike prices, okay, for each given month. And as I mentioned, you see on the option chain, we show you the calculation for the downside protection, our percent if unchanged. I can select to view the annualized as well, and also the percent if assigned if I was going to implement this as a covered call. So let's say we were focused on March right now. Now, February is only 10 days away, and we didn't want to go out to May. You see down here, May, we have 101 days left to expiration. So let's just go to March. Let's go to the next month here. Okay, so we see some of the calls that we saw before. That March 43 call, well, there's our $1.95 premium, and it gives us that 4.6% downside protection. If the stock's trading above 43 at March expiration, we make that 5.7% return, and our probability is 46.9%. Okay, and if we went to the 42 call, we saw that before. We're collecting $2.48 now, and higher premium because it's slightly in the money. This lowers our potential return if assigned. Of course, we get a higher probability. So you can easily compare the downside protection versus potential return and probability if you're trading covered calls just by using the field there for the option chain. Okay, Mike wanted to know, how can I make the font larger? Well, there are ways that you can increase the size. You know, there's certain functions you can do on most operating systems where you can just use the Control plus or Alt plus, for example, to increase the size of the font there. But we don't have a specific selection on Power Options to increase or decrease the font, Mike. But you should be able to increase or zoom on your page using some of the standard features of your operating system as well. Okay. Now, let's say that the other tool I mentioned is the search by symbol tool. Okay, this is for one stock at a time. And for the covered call strategy and the naked put strategy, we allow you to enter multiple symbols. You can enter in up to 75 symbols. You can enter 15 blocks in as well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different blocks. So let's say I wanted to compare covered calls to PXP, to, let's say, Apache, to Agilent, and maybe even Craft, for example. Just take a few. And I wanted to look at the March series there, so I'll change that. So just plug in my 4 symbols, and it will always remember these symbols until you change it. And what this is going to show you, for if I'm doing covered calls and naked puts and I use the search by symbol, it's going to show me the in the money and the out of the money covered call opportunity for the particular stock. So with Kraft at 38.44, for example, we're showcasing the March 38 and the March 39 call, where you can compare the premium, of course, the straight option bid versus the potential percent if assigned and downside protection for those particular call opportunities. But again, if you wanted to evaluate more strikes, that's where the option chain comes in. Now let's very quickly, before we go into the search tool, let's go over to bull put credit again. For married puts, bull put credits, bear call credits, and calendar spreads, if I wanted to see the various combinations one stock at a time, I wouldn't use the option chain, but we would want to use the search by symbol. Okay, so let's just go bull put credit. We'll use the same feature. I'll type in PXP. We'll use March. And I can select to view less results or more results or all results there. Let's just go with more results. And this will show us some of the various combinations, spread combinations that we can view. There's a fair amount here because it's a single strike, of course. But again, what we're viewing here, let's say on vertical spreads, is looking at my stock in March and the different combinations. So what is my minimum net credit, my potential return, my probability? I probably want to be focused more in this range with the higher probabilities further out of the money, but still want to match the percentage return I'm looking for. So this allows you to compare the different combinations one stock at a time to see which one really suits your risk-reward tolerance and your probability requirements. Okay? So you wouldn't want to use the option chain for multi-leg positions. You'd want to use the search by symbol to identify positions one stock at a time. Well, one of the most powerful features of Power Options, of course, is what if I don't have a stock? I'm looking across the universe of options to identify stocks that match my requirements and have the return I want. Well, that's where we're going to use the search function in any strategy. So we just went to covered call now again, and we clicked on search. And when you click on the search tool, let's go back to one of the defaults. If you go into the covered call search, the first time you go into the search for a given strategy, you're going to see a listing of potential trades. These are not recommendations or suggestions. These are simply the opportunities that match a default criteria set that we created for you to use as a stepping stone. For example, as I scroll down below the listed trades, we see our parameter field. Now, some of the basic criteria we're looking at here is we're looking at our option expiration time frame of March, so just the next available month. We have some base criteria we're looking for in the covered call here. It has to have at least a 3% downside protection, minimum 3% return if assigned, an option bid price, or let's say 40 cents. Most of our option information, by the way, is in the center section. You see we also have fields here for the annualized percent if assigned or downside protection, volume, option volume and open interest are liquidity values for the position. So we have those here as well. Comparisons of overvalued and undervalued, we can use the Black-Scholes ratio, 50-day or SIV. The implied volatility ranges, the implied volatility over the historical or implied volatility over SIV. It's another popular way that investors use to identify if the option is overvalued or undervalued. And then, of course, you also have some values for your time value, percent time value, or bid-ask spread. If you're selling or buying and you want to make sure that the options that you're seeing have a minimum of only a 20-cent bid-ask spread or a 15-cent bid-ask spread, you'd want to enter that as well. Now over on the right is most of our stock information. So in addition to underlying stock price, we have some fundamental criteria. You can screen for stocks that have certain earnings per share growth or price per earnings, 50 in a certain percent of their 52-week range, for example. If you want to look by percentage stock volume today, shares outstanding, dividend yield, beta, and so forth. Average stock volume, if you look for higher volume stocks, you can implement that as well. Let me do this real quick here. Okay, apologize for that. Okay, and we also have some technical indicators you can filter by. The RSI, Relative Strength Index, the percent BB20 and percent bandwidth, that reflects to the Bollinger Band ranges and the Bollinger Band width. And then, of course, you can also screen for stocks that are trading above or below a 50-day moving average. Now, there are a lot of criteria that you can use, both related to the option and related to the stock. The rule of thumb here on the search tool is number one, don't be intimidated. Yes, it looks expansive. It looks like there's a lot of criteria. But if you've been researching a particular strategy, you kind of know what you're looking for. For example, 69% of our audience said they're researching and right now are trading covered calls and naked puts. Well, in my mind, if I've been researching covered calls, well, covered calls is a neutral to bullish strategy, buying stocks, selling a call against it to generate premium. I might be looking to get assigned, I might not. But I typically, would want the stock to stay the same or move up in price. Now, right there, of course, we know that when you're selling premium, let me go back one step. When I'm selling premium covered calls, naked puts, credit spreads, for example, or the income strategies, I usually want to be selling front month to maximize my annualized percentage return. Or maybe I have a range of days where I don't want to go more than 50 or 60 days at a time. Well, just that brief discussion, that very brief introduction to covered calls, gives me a listing of several criteria I might already want to use. Now, as I mentioned, these default settings that we have here, you see we have the initial values at the money, in the money, default search for covered calls, and out of the money. These are just stepping stones to create your own personal search. I can tweak these on the fly, or if I have a few things I want to look for, I can simply scroll down to the bottom and hit clear these settings. And that's going to empty everything out of the portfolio or out of the criteria field, and let's just start from scratch. Let's say my goals are to trade covered calls. I want strong stocks with good management, good fundamentals, okay? And I'm potentially, I have a minimum requirement of what I want to receive. So we'll just put that in. Now let's say my time frame, I can look just for March, but let's say I'm okay trading positions, any covered call that has an expiration date between, let's say, 15 and 60 days out in time. So I can change my option expiration to all months. I'll use the days to expiration field to put in 15 to 60 days. So I'll look across a variety of months if they match in that time frame. Now, in general, I might want to look just at the money covered call opportunities. I might want to go in the money for more protection. Let's say I did want to go in the money and I want to go maybe at least 2 or 3% in the money, or maybe one strike, minimum one strike. I really want to see opportunities there, so I can use the show in the money fields to go minimum one strike in the money, or let's say 2% as well. Now, if I'm trading a covered call position, I may want to, if I'm opening a new position, we may, of course, want to avoid stocks that have an earnings date between now and expiration. So in the earnings date field, I'll just check not between now and expiration. I want to kind of remove any surprises. Well, my personal goals, I'm going slightly in the money. So say I want to make sure I have a downside protection of at least 5%. So we'll just plug that in. The downside protection is simply the option bid price divided by the stock price. I want to make sure I'm collecting at least 5% of premium against my stock position. But, if the percentage fund change, if the stock stays at the same price, maybe I want to make sure I make at least 1%. And of course, my percent if assigned. What are my personal goals? Minimum, I want to make 2.5% if I'm called out of the position. Now, option volume today, liquidity, open interest. Now, general rule of thumb that Ernie and I talk about in our two books, the Naked Put book and the Protective Option Strategies, is in general, if you know how many shares and contracts you're selling, let's say on average I buy 500 shares and sell 5 calls, or buy 500 shares of stock and buy 5 puts, for example, well, I may want to make sure that my option volume today is at least 5 times the number of contracts I'm planning on trading, and that my open interest is maybe 10 times the number of contracts I'm planning on trading. That's, of course, just a very basic rule. A lot of quality stocks that I might look for, things such as, let's say Yahoo or things of that nature. Not necessarily Yahoo's a quality stock, but you'll see open interest of several thousand or maybe tens of thousands. But just as a basic rule, you want to see some liquidity. Okay? And let's say that my requirement is I want to collect at least 50 cents. Yes, I already put in that I want at least a 1% return if unchanged and a 2.5% if assigned. But if I do have a requirement that I want to receive at least 50 or 60 cents of premium when I sell a call or sell a put in the naked put menu or for the net credit of a bull put credit or bear call credit, you can put that in as well. Now, for now, we're going to ignore these other criteria down here at the bottom. Let's move over to the right. And so I can start putting in my stock criteria. Well, personally, maybe my account is reasonable size, but it's a smaller account, and I know that when I open positions, either married puts, collars, or long stock positions, even naked puts, if I might be put the stock to me, that I'm only going to trade stocks that are between, let's say, $5 and maybe $55 per share. That's usually the first thing I tell investors to change when they come onto any search, is that, well, if you're looking at buying stock, you're selling naked puts, you may have the stock put to you, what are you willing to spend on the stock? Well, I usually don't buy stocks that are over $65. Well, that's the first thing you'd want to change there in the stock price field. Now, I can use, excuse me, as some we saw in the defaults, I might want to look for stocks that have a good earnings per share growth, the growth in earnings from last year to this year. I might use a limited PE ratio of 0 to 40. These are not recommendations. These are just some of the things I mentioned in that brief introduction that may translate to what I want to look for. And you can use things for broker recommendation. Let's say I wanted to look for dividend stocks as well. I want to make sure that the stock pays at least a 1% dividend, annual dividend. I'll plug that in as well. And we could also add in things there for average stock volume. Let's say, this is measured in thousands, by the way, and you can see that if you had a question about a criteria, if you simply hover over the listing here in the field or on the column heading above, you'll get a pop-up definition. So this average stock volume is measured in thousands. It's the average over the last 90 days. Let's say I only want to make sure that I'm looking for stocks that trade at least 750,000 shares per day. We can put that in as well. And I want to look for stocks that are trading in an uptrend, so I'll use the simple moving average field to look for stocks trading above the SMA 50. There's only a few criteria we've put in. If you, for example, now, if you did not have a listing of the stock criteria that you wanted to use, or you're not sure which criteria to put in, remember, you can always use this recommended list drop-down menu to screen for specific company lists. So if I just wanted to look for stocks, the Investor's Business Daily lists, for example, I just wanted to look for stocks maybe in the S&P 500 group, or the Standard & Poor's 5-star rated stocks, or some of the value line stocks are in here as well. Or if you just wanted to look for weekly options, that's a selection you can view also, just the stocks that offer weekly options. Now, the weekly options wouldn't match my criteria, remember, because I put in an expiration date of 15 to 60 days out in time, so that would automatically double filter it because there's no weekly series right now that has 15 days to expiration. But if you follow some of these stock lists, so also the Dow 30, for example, if you follow some of those stock lists, you can just select those from the drop-down menu rather than putting in listed criteria. But with just those basic changes for this particular screen, the covered call strategy, let's go ahead and submit these settings. And isn't that interesting? Dividend-paying stocks that do not have an earnings date between now and expiration, you always want to verify that, though. Well, that are trading between $5 and $55 and have my downside protection, percent if assigned, and percent if unchanged requirement. Well, there's only 7 total results out of all 3,200 plus optionable stocks and 325,000 plus available call options. We narrowed it down to 7 results. That search wasn't really that restrictive. Earnings date is factoring into this a little bit right now. But you see how you want to narrow your search results down based on what you're looking for in any strategy. You want a manageable list of maybe only a dozen to 2 dozen positions so you can tweak the filters more and more. All right, now, in addition to customizing the search criteria based on my requirements, we can also customize the view. Okay, there were the column view here for our results. There were several criteria I entered, things such as earnings per share growth, price per earnings. We have our downside protection, percent if unchanged, percent if assigned. I also wanted to look for option volume and open interest, but they're currently not available in my column menu. So any of the columns we can search by down below, I can also choose to view in our results field. Simply want to click the See More or Less Columns button up at the top. This will take us to a configuration page. So I have my stock information on the left. Everything I could filter by is available to view. So I might want to look for the percent EPSG. The dividend yield was one of the other filters that we added, for example. And I could even select to view the earnings date. And okay, so I want to see maybe option volume and open interest as well, so I'll check those for my liquidity. So you can pick and choose, and even if you wanted to view the different Greeks here, for those of you doing long calls and long puts, you might want to add in the gamma, theta, vega, for example, depending on how you trade those positions. Okay, so once I've selected those, I can choose to reorder the columns first before I save and return. So if I wanted my option volume and open interest closer to the expire strike and days to expiration, well, I'll just select to move those up. I'll move option volume up, and I'll move the open interest next to the volume. So my option bid, net debit, and my others. And I'll leave the others as they are right now. So now I can just click Save and Return. It'll ask me to close the window to refresh the page, and now we can resend those. Once it refreshes now, you see my new columns have been added. Now, this is a good time to take a look at this. We're talking about our series in March, Expiration, and we did check the box to view positions that do not have an earnings date between now and expiration, but you always want to verify that. And sometimes we just don't get updated information on some of the positions that maybe didn't declare when their earnings date is going to be released, or if they're hesitating on releasing their earnings. And what I wanted to mention here, one of the advantages of selecting the earnings date field, is take a look at middle steel, MT. We see that the last earnings date we have listed, the last earnings dates highlighted in red, was 11/3/2011. Well, this tells me that there's probably an earnings coming up sometime in February. It's got to be 3 months away. So this one, I might, when I go in my research and analysis, I'm going to take a look at that and verify this potentially with my broker or on a chart as to when the next earnings might be. So you always want to double check on the earnings, even though they're listed. But we see some of these here. The Lincoln National Corp, the last earnings was on 2/7. Seagate Tech came out on 1/31. And this JBL Circuit has earnings listed at 3/20, but that's a day or so after the March expiration, I believe. Okay. Let me pause for a moment. Okay, Gary. I just had a couple quick questions come in. I'll pause now before we go into the research and analysis from these positions, and then we'll go into the portfolio. But if you have a quick question, send it in. So I'll answer these now before we start researching the positions. Gary, if you specify a dividend stock, is the dividend included in the performance numbers? No. So I selected the dividend yield here of 2.9%. Oh, let's look at the first one here. Let's just stay with, my apologies, Lincoln National Corp, LNC. This return if assigned and the downside protection is based just on the stock price and our option premium of $1.65. This 1.3% dividend yield is not included in the percent if assigned or in the annualized percentage return. However, if you wanted to quickly evaluate that on the fly, what I can do is if I go into the calculators here and the covered call calculator, or the strategy calculator, okay, it'll add me if I wanted to add in my dividend per share, my stock commission, or my option commission as well. And if I put in, let's say, a $5.95 option commission, $7.95 stock commission, for example, oh, I did that wrong. My apologies. Let's say a dividend share of 0.15 and a stock commission of $7.95. Okay, so we see our numbers up here, the 6.9% downside, 3.6 unchanged and if assigned. And as I change my values here, let's hit submit on the calculator tool. Okay, and so it shows me those values, but now down below, it's taking into account the commission fee and the dividend. How would it adjust based by the dividend and my commission fees, my percent if unchanged and percent if assigned, using our own numbers there. So you can quickly use the calculator tool, Gary, to see that, but you're right, on the main screen here on the search results, the percent if assigned, percent if unchanged returns are not factoring in that different one. Dom, great question. I didn't actually get to that, but is there a way to input or import a list of 40 to 50 stocks to limit the option search? Absolutely. You don't have to input them manually. Let's scroll down back to the search screen very quickly, or the parameter field. Remember I mentioned that drop-down list for the recommended list. In my data pod, remember I had watch list 1, watch list 2, and watch list 3. As soon as I type in stocks individually, on that pod, yes, when I type them in individually there, they are recorded in. But let's say I wanted to create my own personal list. I wanted to import a list or copy and paste a list. We'll simply click the link to the right of the recommended list. We want to click on Create/Modify List. This is a text link. So we'll click on Create and Modify Lists. And here are my available lists that I've created. Okay, so my example list, index versus ETF, and list number 1, list number 2, new February positions, so forth. Okay, watch list 1, 2, and 3. But if I wanted to create a new list on this page, I can simply click Create List. That'll take me to a blank list. We'll just call it Test Multiple. Okay, and list description, you can put in a description if you want. And then you can type in your symbols manually or simply copy and paste them from an Excel spreadsheet or CSV file. So if I wanted to enter in, again, some of the stocks we looked at before. Oops, sorry. We'll type it in manually, or I can just copy and paste. And once I do that, we click on Create. And then our new list was just created here. So we have 2/8/2012. There's Test Multiple. We have 4 stocks in, but I can always come back in and edit or add more to those as well. And once I close the window, we'll be prompted to refresh our page. And when we refresh the page there, sorry about that, we refresh the page, we can go to our lists again, and there's our Test Multiple list. Okay, so you can do that right through the Create and Modify List link, Dom, to copy and paste in a list or create them numerically. Okay, so what have we done so far? We came in, we used the default search as a stepping stone. You can also use the sample searches in each menu as a stepping stone as well. Those are those pre-themed searches, but you can use those as a stepping stone to adjust the criteria. We created our own from scratch, and we ran our search, and we have the top 7 results that match our criteria. Now we chose to leave this particular covered call screen sorted by percent if assigned. So you can, again, you can always, any of the criteria you can filter by, you can choose to sort by as well. Now, does this mean that because the Lincoln National Corp, LNC, has the highest percent of assigned that matches my criteria, are we going to go ahead and just trade this position? No. You've got to do further research and analysis. And to do that quickly, we're going to use the More Information buttons here over to the left. This is the same you see in every strategy. If you were to bold put credit spread search, you have the information here you can link to and so forth. Okay, so the first thing I typically do is I want to go to big charts. We're not going to talk about how I use the charts, but you can look at the 1-year snapshot or big charts. So if I just click on big charts here very quickly, we can see the trading range. So it has had a decline recently, but it's been moving back up. A little dip here in the past month or so. That might be worrisome. That might have been based on the earnings. Doesn't look like it's the earnings on 2/7, but it's been coming back up steadily in price. You can customize big charts for certain things by going to indicators. So if you wanted to see the moving averages, for example, if you wanted to look at Bollinger Bands, see the splits or earnings, or if you wanted to use things such as RSI, MACD, fast or slow stochastic, Williams %R, you can customize the chart. Also the time frame, this is just a base 1-year chart, but you can use 3 months, 6 months, and so forth. And then if you click Store Chart Settings down here at the bottom, once you set your upper or lower indicators, then it will save that, so every time you link from a stock from Power Options, it will show that particular chart with those particular indicators as well. So if I looked at this stock chart and I decided, well, this doesn't really match what I'm looking for in a covered call position, well, I'll just close this. Or let's say I was looking at bear call credits or bull put credits, that particular chart didn't make me comfortable, I wasn't happy with the trend. Well, then I'll just close that and I'll move on to the next one. And I'll look at the start chart for the second position and say, okay, does this one match what I'm looking for as well? Almost a similar thing. Had a very big dip, but then it's been moving up gradually. Okay, so if the chart doesn't match what I want to see, I'm just going to move on to the next one. And I'll keep going until I find a stock chart that I'm more comfortable with of the results that match my criteria. Now let's stick with LNC. Let's say we did like the chart. The second thing I always like to do is go into the company information. And I just want to take a look at the recent news. This will link you to the Yahoo News page, but I want to look at the recent headlines. Is there anything out there over the last month or so that might cause me hesitation to enter the position? Anything about a boardroom scandal, a switching over of management, for example, patent lawsuit that's pending that hasn't been resolved yet, especially if you're looking at biotech stocks. You got to really know when that next FDA approval is, because that could cause, if you're more aggressive in trading the biotech stocks, you have to know where your next approval is, because that could your stock could potentially gain 60% in an hour if it's approved, or it could lose 80%. I don't recommend trading the biotech stocks with covered calls at all. But anyway, you just want to go through the news and make sure there's nothing out there that causes you hesitation. You can also take a look at the earnings events and the profile as well. My third step is after I look at the charts and the company news and information, I may go into the detailed research. Now, if I go to the stock research page or the option research page, this shows me all of the data we have for a particular stock and the option. So if I go to the option research page very quickly here, all right, this shows me all of the available data that we have for the option. The Greeks, for example, over here on the left, the volume, open interest, percent if assigned and not if assigned returns, probabilities, Black-Scholes ratios. And then down below you have sort of a historical chart for when this option was released. It looks like this March option was just released after January expiration on 1/23. But I can compare differences between, let's say, the option bid price to implied volatility, or Black-Scholes value, stock price, option volume to stock price, option bid to open interest, and so forth. So you can choose to view different comparisons historically on the option bid, since the option was released on the market as well. Okay, and then the stock table, it just shows, the stock research tool shows you all the stock research. That's not really an important step unless you really want to get down to the nitty-gritty. All right, third thing I like to do now is I'm just going to go to profit and loss chart. So I've looked at the chart. I went through the company news, and nothing that I saw caused me hesitation to enter the position. Did my due diligence. Went to the detailed research tool just to get some more views. And now I'm going to maybe go ahead and look at the profit and loss chart for this particular position. And this is going to give me the graphical interpretation. Oh, I'm sorry, folks. There we go. That's what we wanted to see. That's just going to give me the graphical interpretation of our covered call. So based on just doing 100 shares, buy in LNC at $23.85, sell one call at $165. So our net debit would be $2,220. Okay, that is our maximum risk. If the stock dropped down to zero, well, then we'd have that loss. And our maximum profit is 80 cents, or 3.6%. Well, I should say $80, but 80 cents premium there, because we're slightly in the money here with the selling the 23 call. And there's our profit and loss chart. Now the profit and loss chart, the blue hockey stick graph, shows you the profit and loss chart at expiration. So if we hold it all the way to March expiration, naturally the stock's trading above $23 per share, we make the maximum profit for this covered call. It's trading below our break even is a net debit of $22.20, so we see that on the chart as well. Let's see if I can, let's go full screen there for a second. Hold on. I apologize, I didn't really want to do that. Okay. So, we can see here where our break even is at expiration. Now this curved red line that shows up, this is our profit and loss chart at the halfway point. Halfway between now and March expiration is February 28th, 2012. So that curved red line is showing you the profit and loss at the halfway point. Now, I can also estimate, well, what would happen if my stock dropped down to about, let's say, $23 in the next 5 or 6 days? So down below, I can run some what-if scenarios, put in my price at 23, and let's say it's on 216. What would my profit and loss look like? Well, it redraws the chart. The curved red line is now drawn for us on 216. And down below, we see that, well, if the stock dropped to $23 on 216, we'd have a loss of $85 on the stock down here at the bottom. And we'd have a gain of 62 cents on the call. It dropped from 165 to 103. Now this isn't etched in stone. This is using the Black-Scholes pricing model, of course. So it's estimating that the stock was trading at 23. That March 23 call would be worth 103. So we have a loss of $23 due to the stock falling faster than the call premium, and that's just what we'd expect. But this just allows you to run the what-if scenarios for the different strategies so you can say, well, worst case scenario, if the stock spikes up 10 points, what would my position look like? Or if the stock spikes down 10 points, what would my position look like as well? And remember, this is just based right now, the monetary values that we're looking at is just based on 100 shares. If I wanted to change that, simply scroll up to the top. Let's say I was contemplating buying 500 shares and selling 5 calls against it. So we'll just change our quantity in the field above, click on Submit. All right, and so now we see that, well, our percentage return didn't change, but now we have $11,100 invested in the position, and our maximum profit is $400. But the percentages will stay the same. It's just the monetary value that changes as well. All right. Jimmy asked, I'm sorry, for straddle plays, can the chart show the dividend payouts? I believe you can select to view the ex-dividend date on the straddle pages, Jimmy, the short or long straddles, and I believe you can select to view the percent dividend yield on those fields as well. I don't know if, I think you should be able to filter by it also if you wanted to limit it to be less than 1% or if you wanted a 2% dividend. You should be able to view that on the straddle as well. Okay. But the straddle, I'm sorry, again, the profit and loss chart here wouldn't reflect the dividend. If you're looking at the profit and loss chart, Jimmy, for a long straddle play or short straddle play, it wouldn't show the dividend payment here, okay, on the profit and loss chart. Now, one of the other neat features about the profit and loss chart is, let's say, well, I like this position, I have a potential of a 3.6% return. Maybe I'm a little bit concerned about the downside. Maybe I'm curious as well. If I buy the stock at 23.85, I sell slightly in the money 23 call, but I'm concerned if there's a major drawdown and I want to protect some, instead of using a stop loss, I want to create a collar here. Well, we could just do it on the fly. Okay, so I'll go to the top and click on View Options. This will pull up a collapsible chain. We are in the custom spread tool now in the profit and loss chart. And we'll just click on March. And I want to say, okay, well, I did sell slightly in the money 23 call, but if the stock really tanks for whatever reason, I want to make sure that I'm insured. So let me add a March 20 put here for roughly 22 cents, and let's see how that does. So I click on the link. It shows me that it's been added. We're going to keep everything simple. I'm going to buy 5 contracts. Now, I don't have to put in a price. Now, if I put in that I'm buying this particular option, it's going to grab the natural ask price. If I put in I'm selling, it's going to grab the natural bid price. So let me go ahead and click Submit now. And now, of course, as we'd expect, well, we canceled out some of our potential return. We dropped from that 3.6% to 2.6%. But now, if the stock really collapses, we can make sure that we're not losing more than 10.8%. Typically, I wouldn't do this if I was selling an in-the-money call. I wouldn't create a collar if I'm selling an in-the-money cover call. But if I'm selling an at or out-of-the-money call, that's typically when I use a standard collar. And down here, of course, the profit and loss chart, once we hit $20, this would flatten out as we continued on. So we have capped our gain with a short call in this position, but we've also capped our losses with the long put as well. So you can customize that on the fly here just by adding new options to add a new leg to see what the new profit and loss chart would look like and if it matches, you know, what you want to do for the position, your risk reward. All right, let's go ahead and close that down. We'll go back to the search. Now, I've looked at the stock chart. I've looked at the company information. I've done my due diligence, went in depth into the research tool. For covered calls, as we mentioned before, if I like this position and I want to say, well, maybe I am more bullish on LNC and I want to know what is the 24, what is the percentage of assigned or downside protection of the 24 call or maybe the 22 call. Well, as we did before, that's where I'd link to the option chain. So we could just compare the risk reward for the March series. Let me select March there, sorry about that. And we have our 23 call with the potential 3.6% return. And I see that if I'm more bullish, if I sell the 24 call for 104, that'd be a 5.4% potential return. My downside protection is lowered, as has my probability. Or if I wanted to be more conservative by selling a 22 call, well, that would result in maybe a 2.3% return with a 9.7% downside protection. So from the search tool, if you found a covered call that you liked, matched your criteria, you liked the stock chart, you didn't see anything in the news or when you did your due diligence there on the research tool, that would cause you hesitation for entering into the position, then you link to the option chain, just compare the different strikes. And what is my risk reward of going deeper in the money or going further out of the money as well? Now, naturally, the out of the money one didn't appear in our results because we specifically told the system to find us those in the money positions. And this one, the 22 strike, didn't come up in the results because the potential percent if assigned is below our 2.5% minimum return rate. It's only 2.3%. Okay. So now the next step, okay, I could use now I'm ready to trade. I've done my research and my analysis, compared it to other positions using the more information buttons. All right, so now I can use the broker link. This, if you have an Options Express account or Brokers Express account, this allows you to link the trade to those brokers. Okay, or if you have your own broker, you just log on to your broker and then go ahead and place the trade. And when you come back, what you want to do is click Add to Portfolio. And then when you click Add to Portfolio, it's going to pull up a listing of your available portfolios. If you haven't created a portfolio yet, it's just going to select this first one here. We're just going to have this selection, New Portfolio Number 1. We could call it covered call test or paper trade, and it's going to start you off with a cash on hand basis of $100,000. Well, we're going to insert this into an already existing one for our webinars, paper trading dividend covered calls. Remember, this LNC has about a 1.3% dividend yield, so we're going to add that in. I'll click insert, and it's going to copy over the information for me so that I have my stock selection, when I'm buying with a number of shares, commission, and so forth, and the option is already selected for me in the current price. We can just put in our values. We're going to do 500 shares and sell 5 calls against it. I have my transaction date, but if I entered this yesterday, I could simply adjust that. We're treating this as a paper trade, and this is not a recommendation or suggestion of a covered call to trade at all, because we didn't do the full research and analysis. We just showed you where the links are. But I'm going to treat this as a paper trade, keep my commissions at 0. So let's go ahead and click submit. And so now we have our listings. Now you see, real quick before I go into this, I want to address Ernest's question. Ernest, will this webinar be available later on replay? Yes, Ernest, it probably will be available tomorrow morning. When you log on to your account, remember, if you go into the main Home tab, when you first log in, you click on Learning Center. One of the menus in the Learning Center, one of the available features in the Learning Center, there's just a link to webinars. And if you click on webinars, let's go ahead and do that real quick. I'll show everyone where it is. So I click on the Learning Center, go to webinars, and on the webinars page, the upcoming webinars are on the left, and our archives are on the right. And they're organized by they're organized by category, Ernest. So under the Power Options Tools Archive, there's already some there for Intro to Power Options, Covered Call Focus, Bull Put Focus, and Long Call. Today's presentation will most likely replace the one from 526 on the Covered Call Focus, and that's where you'll be able to access that tomorrow morning, Ernest. Okay, so it will be available for replay. All right, let's go back to our portfolio. When I entered the position, it linked to the profit and loss portfolio. This is where we track our open positions. So here is our LNC covered call. Now we show everything as a linked position. So I have my stock and my short call listed together. I have 3 covered calls, so they're grouped together, and I have 2 callers. They're grouped together, so I can see everything in an easy view with a linked position. Okay, so we just entered Lincoln National Corp. 0 days into the position, we have 38 days to expiration. That's what that number in parentheses means. And so we have our current price of the stock, what we received for the call, where they both are right now. And then over on the right, what I've always selected on my portfolio is this link to View Position Analysis up at the top. And what that does is I scroll over to the far right. It's great to see the change for the position by the stock leg and the option leg individually. But over here, what I'm seeing is my position as a whole. So my original position cost, there's at $11,105. My original expected gain is 3.6%. My current liquidation value right now, if I bought to close the stock and sold to close our stock, bought to close the call, we'd have a loss of $33. This is essentially due to the bid-ask spread on the position, the 5 contracts with that 6 cent difference there. And then, of course, if the expiration value, future expiration value, this is not projecting where the stock's going to be trading. This is simply saying if the stock stays at the same price where it is right now, we would get assigned and we'd make the maximum 3.6%. Now, this is, of course, more important when we're looking at positions that we've already entered. For example, we have an arch cold position here. I want to take a look at this one. This is a covered call. You see here that the covered call was opened on 11/16, and we currently have a February call that was sold on 1/27. So this is a covered call position that's been rolled over time. And for arch coal, we did pay $16.40 for it on 11/16, but you see I have an adjusted effective cost per share. For the calls that we've rolled and sold against, we've lowered our cost basis of $16.40 down to $14.37. And right now the stock's trading at $15.15, but you do see that this column is highlighted in red. Our alerts column is highlighted in red, and my upper stop limit is highlighted in red as well. Every time you enter the positions. Okay. All right, Larry, let me get Larry's question first here because we're right on that, and then Dom, I'll go ahead and address yours as well in a moment. Larry wanted to know, why is the view background area sometimes pink, white, or blue? Okay. So you see the arch coal here is white. Now, and then the next one below that is a blue, slightly gray. The Apache Corp one, you see we have a blue-gray background. What the programmers did is that they know that you have a covered call here. This is one covered call, the arch coal plus the call. So the second covered call in Apache, they highlighted the second one, the stock and the call leg, in blue, so you can separate out the two positions. So it's sort of like position 1 is highlighted in white, position 2 is in blue, position 3 is in white, and so forth. And then on the collars, it starts over in a new strategy. So my first position has a white background, and to keep them separated, my second collar on PXP has a blue grayish background there, Larry. Now the pink that you see, sometimes in this view here, I'm sorry, what I'm looking at in the pink is to tell me that an alert has been triggered. Now, if I have run a search, Larry, and I link to the option chain to look at other strike prices, for example, I might see one line highlighted in pink. Now, what that's telling me on the option chain is that that particular line that's highlighted in pink is the strike price of the call I linked over from the search tool. So it's giving me a close reference of which position did I link over from, so I can quickly compare the positions around it. So that's why some of the differences are there between the white, the blue, and the pink. And on the portfolio, the pink typically means that an alert has been triggered. Well, let's go ahead and take a look. I'm going to click on View, the text link for View, next to Arch Call. Now that it shows me that an alert has been triggered. And for the covered call, these are the type of alerts you can set. All right, so we can set an alert on the stock price limit. Well, that's what's been triggered. There's two alerts that have been triggered up at the top. Stock's currently trading at 15.15, which is below my lower limit of 16.25 that I set, and I'm within 2 days until earnings. Ooh, so if I'm expecting good earnings on Arch Call, I might want to buy back this call to allow the stock to appreciate in price without having that cap in place. All right, so you can also set alerts on the percentage change for the stock. You can set an upper or lower limit for the option price, or the option percent change, and if I'm in a bull put spread, I could set it for leg 1 and leg 2. I could set the ask limit or the bid limit for the long put or the short put, for example, and the time value monetary limit also. My days to expiration, if I want to be notified if I'm less than 5 days to expiration, that's one that's selected as well. And then, of course, down below we have some of our criteria, stock criteria fundamentals. So if I want to be notified if a stock's trading above or below a 50-day or 20-day moving average, if the stock has now moved above or below a lower or upper Bollinger Band, if we've had the 52-week high or 52-week low, the stock's moved above or below that. And then, of course, remember, I selected days to earnings less than 3, so I'm within 2 days to earnings, so that other alerts has been triggered. You can also alert days to ex-dividend date. Oh, Mike has to leave. Sorry, Mike, that you have to go, but remember, this will be archived for you, so you can view that at any time. Okay? Okay. David asked a question, and Dom, I do see your question. I'm getting to that. David asked a question. He says, I have a married put in my portfolio, but don't see the position cost column. Can you change the view options in your portfolio? Not right now, David, but in a married put, you should be able to see that. Let's take a look very quickly. So I just wanted to review what alerts can be set there. I'm sorry, folks. Let's go back to profit and loss portfolios here. Okay. Now, let me see. Married puts 2012. Okay, so here's the Yamana Gold position that was entered. And David, I do have a position cost here, but what's not shown is the original expected gain or loss. All right, so that position cost should show up. I might take a look, David, later on at your account to see why that's not coming up. And typically it wants to be linked to an even amount. For a true covered call, a true married put, I'd want the same number of contracts as I have number of shares. If you're tracking a married put, David, that happens to be a ratio. Let's say you have 300 shares of stock but 1 put, or if you have 300 shares of stock and 5 puts on the position, it still should calculate that position cost for you, but it might not be doing that because of a different ratio on the position. But yes, that's there, but the original gain and loss won't show up, the position cost won't show up, David, because the original expected gain or loss in the married put is unlimited. Right? We don't have a calculated return for the position, but you still should have that liquidation value and future expiration value. David, you know, I won't have time right after the webinar ends, but later on this afternoon I will take a look at your position there, or send me an email with your specifics, and I'll take a look at that and see why that position cost is not showing up. Okay, let's go back to the profit and loss portfolio there on the position. Okay, and let's go back to our covered calls. Okay, so we want to take a look at the Arch Call again. All right, so here we have ACI, we have Arch Call, we have 200 shares, and 2 calls, and our alert has been triggered. So now, what we want to take a look at here is an alert's been triggered. What I want to do is click the More Information button. We want to go to Position Actions, and of course this is where we'd make any adjustments. If I'm going to buy to close a call, sell to close a call, if I want to edit the position, if you need to delete a leg or delete a position, or, of course, add the dividends. As you're tracking a dividend-paying stock and you want to add the dividends in there, you just want to click on that. Okay? So when I go to Position Actions, though, I want to go to Position Analysis. Now this will show us the information on the position. Okay? So here's my covered call using my effective cost per share, keeping into account the other trades that we've made. And we see my current return, the time value left is 3.1%. We have 10 days left to expiration. This was a February call that we sold at 55 cents. Now as we scroll down, we see some of the information we saw before. That current liquidation value, remember, that's at 5.1%. And we show that the liquidation expiration profit is 60.2%, meaning if we liquidated this covered call right now, we'd have a return of 5.1%. But the future expiration is 8.5%. So if I leave the position alone, the stock stays above 15, I could make 8.5%. So right now, if we liquidate, we're making 60% of what we expected to make. But down below, we see some potential rollout opportunities. Okay? So what we have here is, well, hey, we could buy to close the February 15 call for the 62 cents ask price right now, and then we could sell to open the March 15 call. Okay, and all the math is done for us. You'll see these rollout opportunities on every strategy. So if you're trading a bull put credit spread, you might see an opportunity to trade it, convert it into an iron condor, or swap out the short call, for example, or short put to roll the short put. You're tracking the Mary put, of course. You'll see some potential income methods or adjustments based on radioactive trading. If you're trading a long call as well, you might see an opportunity to turn it into a calendar spread. So these are calculated for you based on customer feedback over the last 14 years. So let's just look at the example. We could buy to close a February 15 call, sell to open the March 15 call. We'd receive 95 cents. So our new adjusted net credit would be 88 cents. This takes into account what we originally received, the buyback cost for the current call we have, and the option bid. And then we see our new potential percent if assigned at March expiration is 11.2%, and the new probability if the stock was trading above that price. Okay, well, it's great to see all that numerically, but what if I wanted to see it graphically? Well, we use the More Information button again here from our rollout opportunities in the position analysis view and go to Simulate Trade. Okay, so on the Simulate Trade feature, what we show here is on the left in red is our current position, where we just saw, and we have a current return of 5.1% if we liquidate, and the max return of 8.5%. The stock's trading above $15 at February expiration. And the new position over here on the right, if we bought to close the February call for 62 cents and sold to open the March 15 call, well, we have a potential return of 11.2%, or monetary $302. So this allows you to see the positions side by side. And of course, the current position, that's the red profit and loss chart, so it's matched to the red information here. And then the blue hockey stick graph shows us the profit and loss for a new position. So we've increased it up a little bit, moved that line up a little bit for a little bit extra profit if we're thinking the stock may be trading above 15 at March expiration. Now, if I like this opportunity and wanted to go ahead and make this adjustment, I can just click the button down at the bottom, Submit Change to Portfolio. But right now, I don't think we're going to do that. We're maybe going to look at this position, this paper trade. It's only a paper trade. We'll look at it next week as we get closer to expiration, see if the stock pulls back a little bit. Maybe the call is going to expire. Not in a rush to roll that paper trade position right now. But it is really important to illustrate just the function of the portfolio tools. Not only can you track your positions, you see a rolling account of your positions based on your changes, your adjustments, your rollouts. You can compare your liquidation values to your future expiration values. But when you link to that position analysis screen, it's a very powerful tool because it not only gives you more in-depth view of where you stand right now, but you also have those rollout opportunities calculated for you so you can compare them side by side and see which one matches your risk-reward tolerance. And of course, down below here on this field, we also show the history of the position. As I mentioned, now this goes back to Larry's question. Larry, these positions here, they're highlighted in pink here. When I'm looking at a history, those are my open positions. Those are positions that are currently open. And the positions that are in white, that have the white background here in the history, these are the closed positions where I have a realized gain or loss. So we had a January call open. We received $300 premium for it, and it expired worthless, so the cost basis was 0. Originally, we started off with a December call that we sold for 190, but we bought it back for 84 cents, and we got closer to expiration, actually as the stock started to fall in price. So I'm looking at my total view here on that particular position. Now, you can also see your closed positions for any portfolio, or compare the open and closed positions if you go to historical reports. All right, so here's my, I'm looking at all positions, realized and unrealized gain or loss for this particular portfolio. Down at the bottom here, you see the profit we had for those Arch call positions, as well as a Prudential call as well. And the analysis view, that's organized by date. The historical reports are organized by date, but if I click on analysis, this shows me all of my positions. Let me go last 5 years here. There we go. Okay, this shows me all the positions that I have organized by excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, organized by stock symbol. So the Kraft position is an entirely closed position. We had a collar on Kraft. All legs were closed on 2/3/2012, so everything's highlighted in white. This is just a historical view. We've already closed those positions. And the others have the red and white. And oh, take a look at Prudential here. We also show in Prudential, as we add those dividends in, those are also archived for us as well, so that we can view that with our total gain and loss in the positions. Okay, well, we're about 10 minutes past the hour. I'm going to handle Dom's question. If anyone else has any other questions, feel free to go ahead and send those in. We'll see if we can get those. And then we're going to wrap up for today. Don wanted to know, how can I learn if an option I'm considering is overpriced or underpriced according to historical volatility? Okay, Don, in any search for the single option strategies, whether you're looking at covered calls, whether you're looking at long calls, whether you're looking at naked puts, for example, the criteria that you want to focus on is IV over HV. This is the implied volatility versus historical volatility. If I want to look for an option where I think it's overpriced compared to its historical volatility, I'm going to look for an IV-HV ratio of greater than 1, telling me the current implied volatility is greater than the historical volatility. Investors will also use the Black-Scholes ratio. This is comparing the actual trading price of the option compared to its Black-Scholes theoretical price. The Black-Scholes ratio 50-day means the 50-day volatility. Historical volatility was used to calculate the Black-Scholes number, theoretical value, and the Black-Scholes ratio SIV. This reflects that the stock's implied volatility index was used to calculate the theoretical worth. Okay, and of course, just as before, in addition to filtering by that DOM, you can also see that in the views. You could choose to view that with the see more or less columns, or if you go to the stock research page, for example, you can view that as well. Now, one thing that I got to tell you guys very quickly, a lot of investors say, oh, if I'm doing covered calls or I'm doing naked puts or I'm doing, collar spreads or income strategies, I want to make sure I'm getting more bang for the buck. I want to make sure that my options are overvalued. Be careful of that. If an option is overvalued, it's overvalued for a reason. There might be some event coming up. There might be some discussion, as we mentioned before, about a recent boardroom scandal or something on the horizon that the market is projecting that this stock might fluctuate wildly in price, which is why the implied volatility is increased. Remember when we created our search, that search criteria I was looking for initially, we identified the 7 covered calls. We found 7 covered calls that matched that loose criteria we were looking for dividend-paying stocks, didn't have earnings, had the minimum % return if assigned and minimum downside protection, and so forth. And we had 7 results, right? Now, if I looked at those 7 results and all 7 results had an IV over HV less than 1, meaning they were all undervalued, would that shy me away from trading those positions? Absolutely not. It matched my return. It matched my minimum net credit. It matched my downside protection on the stocks I wanted to see. So if it's matching my return and it's matching my downside protection, I'm not going to be concerned if it's overvalued or undervalued. Okay, Ernest asks, is this information based only on the New York Stock Exchange only? Yeah, we're looking at all 6 exchanges. We're looking for the bid prices and the ask prices we're showing. We're looking at what's called the NBBO, the National Best Bid Offer, and that compares the bid and the ask price across the 6 exchanges as well, Ernest. But yeah, we're only looking at standard stocks, ETFs, and indexes. Okay. Okay, let's see here. Who was that? Larry asked, why is it that some types of trades offer a position analysis and others don't? You have a married put with an income method number 6, but it doesn't offer a position analysis. That's right. Right now, Larry, in the portfolio tools, only the positions that match the static view of the 23 different strategies. For example, even stock plus put, even stock plus call, 200 shares of stock, 2 calls, for example, will show a position analysis. A married put plus a bear call credit spread, income method number 6 with radioactive trading techniques, is not what we consider a standard strategy that you would search by. So right now in the programming, there's not a position analysis view for anything that's registered as a custom spread. Okay? Oh, David, my apologies. David figured out what we were talking about earlier. That's right. Let's go back to the portfolio there, profit and loss portfolios. Fantastic. Yes, I apologize, David. The reason why you didn't see the position cost is because to see the position cost, these extra 6 columns, the original expected gain or loss, future expiration value, you need to check the box review position analysis. I'm sorry, David. I completely forgot about that. If I uncheck that box, those 6 columns will be removed, and I just see the individual legs. And when I click that back on, it adds the position cost, the original expected gain and loss, liquidation value, and future expiration value. I'm sorry, David. I just misread the question there when you originally asked it, but fantastic. Okay, let's see here. All right, looks like that's all the questions that came in. You can still send another question, but I'm just going to jump in here and wrap up. All right, well, I feel this is fairly self-explanatory. Why do we feel Power Options is the best set of tools out there to help with your options research analysis? You've got a patented search of over 23 different strategies. Don't be intimidated by it. We saw today how easy it is just to put in a few criteria that you might look for in a given strategy, just to narrow down the universe. And then, of course, if we ran that covered call search that we created and I still had, 80 or 90 results, I could have added just a few other criteria in there to further filter that down. You can customize the searches and the screen views based on what kind of criteria you like to use to invest in. Once you've done that, you have those quick links, the more information buttons to further compare and research the strategies. And look at the stock chart, remember, company news and information, the last earnings and events. You can look at the profit and loss chart there to run your what-if scenarios. And, of course, then you also want to make sure, as we talked about before, that verify the earnings, verify the recent events as well. And then, of course, you can compare the others. For those of you that were trading spreads, I'm sorry, if we're doing bull put, credit spreads, or married puts, and I ran a search, instead of going to the option chain as we did with covered calls to compare the different strikes and potential returns and probabilities, you would link to the one strike tool. Okay, you wouldn't link to the option chain if you're doing a multi-leg strategy such as that, a spread trade, for example, or a married put or a collar spread. You'd go to the search by symbol tool to compare the other combinations. All right. Okay, the portfolio tools, I know we glossed over that very quickly because we're running out of time, but they're very powerful. If you're not using the portfolio yet, you really want to create a portfolio and start using that and getting comfortable with it because it's really going to help you with not only tracking your positions, but managing the positions, adjusting them, and keeping a record of your adjustments. You can also use that to help you with strategy points. Start paper trading a strategy and then say, okay, well, I'm going to be really strict with this, and I'm going to roll the calls, or I'm going to adjust the position if the stock moves up 5% or moves within 1% of my strike price. Start using the portfolio tool to do that to help you fine-tune your trading techniques. Okay. All right, in addition to that, we offer the toll-free customer or free email support. You can email us at any time with your questions or call us at the toll-free number if you live inside the continental U.S. And then, as we talked about, the historical data is available to those of you on the trial. It's not available in the standard 20-minute delayed or real-time service, but we do have the historical tools available for the professional level service called the real-time with historical upgrade. All right, so the 20-minute delayed service gives you access to all the tools in the tool menu except for the historical tools, of course, and that's only $60 per month. Real-time service, every time you refresh the page or run the search, you get the numbers at that moment. That's only $80 per month, only $20 more. And then, of course, the real-time service with the historical upgrade, that's $100 per month. And there are discount rates available for yearly subscriptions also. Some of our educational products, those of you who are interested in the radioactive trading techniques, that limited risk trading with minimized risk and the 10 different income methods, well, we offer the blueprint that was written by Kurt Frankenberg. And for those other strategies, in the Power Store, if you link to that, we've got a lot of low-cost books loaded with information. The Naked Puts book, the Protective Options Strategies book, and the Iron Condors book written by Mike Phillips, the head analyst at Power Options Applied. These not only discuss our thoughts on the strategies, management techniques of those positions, but also how to use the Power Options tools to implement condors and spreads, protective option strategies, and naked puts as well. And these books are, I think the Iron Condor book's $20, and I think the naked puts and protective option strategies are about $14. Okay? Now, all of this we showed today, and you can see it's geared towards self-directed options investors. Hey, if you're not ready to be self-directed yet, you might want to check out Power Options Applied. That's our sister site, sort of an advisory newsletter service. They offer several trade folios, iron condors, and covered call strategies. They pick the trades and manage the positions. So they have portfolios for iron condors, covered calls, double diagonals as well. So you can take a look at that at Power Options Applied. And of course, those of you following the radioactive trading techniques or the information in the blueprint there, the Fusion subscription at radioactivetrading.com, that allows you to follow over Kurt's shoulder and Ernie's shoulder. You can see Kurt and Ernie's radioactive trades married put positions and follow them along with their positions, review their historical percentages as well. And that's at radioactivetrading.com with the Fusion subscription. All right, our upcoming free webinars every Friday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I host an open discussion presentation. So if you have questions, you want to make sure you join us at Friday. And it's just an open discussion. I don't have any planned material. We just handle the questions that come in from the customers and use the Power Options tools to showcase those as well. Typically every Wednesday, we're going to run this Introduction to Power Options presentation Wednesday at 12 noon. And of course, remember every Tuesday and Thursday at 12 noon, Kurt Frankenberg hosts those Introduction to Radioactive Trading presentations about his radioactive trading approach, the unique married put setup, and then the 10 different income methods, of course. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for joining me this afternoon. If you think of a question in the next few minutes, or if you think of a question that you wanted to ask, or you didn't get a chance to type it, send me an email. Just send it to support@powerop.com, and I'll take a look at that. Remember, of course, you live inside the continental U.S., you can call us toll-free at 877-992-7971. And if you live outside the continental U.S., you can reach us at 302-992-7971. Of course, there's contact links on every Power Options page. Again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me this afternoon. Thank you for taking the walkthrough with the Power Options tools with us. Remember, if you haven't yet, schedule one of those coaching sessions if you want to further walk through on the site to get more familiar with the tools. And if you had any strategy questions, remember, we can't give you direct advice. We could certainly walk through the math and discuss some of the ins and outs of particular strategies as well. So you want to make sure you sign up for one of those coaching sessions, whether you're a trial member or a subscriber. And for those of you that are currently on your 14-day free trial, remember, if you subscribe to Power Options at the end or before the end of your 14-day free trial, you will receive an additional 14 days for free. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks again. Happy trading, and we'll see you at one of our free live webinars coming up. Take care now. Good night.